Hey, Scott. Oops.
Morning, Mark. How are you?
Good. Let me adjust my headset here.
I have to turn off the Bluetooth on my phone so I don't get interrupted.
Good.
All right, cool.
And Mark, if you're having to invite anybody or somebody that needs a Collaborate Pro license that's on this training, use Clark Brown, because he's our BIM expert, Revit rendering and all of that. So if you need somebody to, instead of me, because I'm the IT guy, so I don't have access, just within account administration.
That's Clark Brown, you said?
Yep. He's on here already.
Okay. Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, good morning, Mark. Just take mine.
Hey, good morning.
I will be the sacrificial lamb. There's no problem with that.
Okay. Yeah, big difference with those of us on the IT computer side. We have a little more patience, with technology. We know it's not perfect, but at least the stuff I'm going through today is it's pretty good. So there's plenty of stuff to complain about in the Autodesk world, but this is one of them that's
Can I ask you
pretty good.
before we get started about the integrations? You said yesterday that Microsoft 365 can integrate with this. What about PDFs and AutoCAD, DWG files? Can you edit those on the fly and save them back into the BIM documents through this?
AutoCAD you can, Revit, and then just the docs, Excel, and PowerPoint. With PDFs, they're like anything. You'll have to, you're creating markups in the PDF, and if there's an update, you have to use the original. Yeah. Well, actually, I wouldn't even download it. I would. Hold on a sec. Well, yeah, no. Here's the deal. The PDF, you already have the PDFs in the cloud. If you do download it, or if you have a copy somewhere on your local server, if you update that PDF and then push it back up to the cloud, it's going to keep a new version. Right. So
what about
I guess
XREFs and DWG?
Yep, it works with that. In fact, I'm going to talk about the link files, but it's going to be the same rule that you can XREF. You do XREFs and links. The nice thing too, I haven't tested this with CAD, but in Revit, if you happen to move the links or you rename the links, it'll automatically update the host file. So, in the past, if you ever move that on your server or you rename a link on your server, then you had to open up the model and you have to repath it.
Right.
But if everything is a Cloud Central model, if you update a file name or the location, that pathing will automatically update.
Yeah, this might be how I get away from having internal servers other than for archive purposes.
Well, so remember, this is not a enterprise document management system. So if you're looking to get rid of internal servers, this is great for hosting your CAD and Revit stuff and PDFs. But there's other cloud services. Like one that we use is called just slips my mind now. And the reason we use it is because it works specifically with Revit models. Oh, Panzura, Panzura, Panzura. And we host all of our servers are in the Panzura cloud. And we originally got that years ago, because before this software came out for Revit, we could put our Revit models in the cloud, and multiple offices can access it and work on Revit models. Prior to that, we used to have to buy WAN accelerators, and you had to buy a WAN accelerator for different offices, and that was slow and clunky. And Panzura was one of the few that allowed you to, they would host a Revit model on their server, and it's just a mapped folder, on your machine, and multiple offices could access it and work on it.
Nice.
And then,
Thanks.
yeah.
All right, we're
So
ready.
we've got, are we ready? Okay, cool. And just last thing, we've got people in our office who work with Panzura that if you have questions, whether it's technical or sales, they can help you out with that.
Okay, I'll follow back up. Thank you.
Yep. Okay, cool. All right, I'll go ahead and share my screen. All right, so today we're gonna look at more of the user side instead of the admin side. We're gonna talk about hosting or taking a Revit model, putting it up in the cloud. I know you guys already have some experience doing that. I looked at one of your projects yesterday. In fact, I copied some models over to this 789 BDG HQ3 training project. I did rename it also. So I'm going to kind of do a comparison, how you're doing it now, and we can replicate it exactly the same on the new platform, but there are some things I would recommend that you do change. So jumping back and looking at the cloud environment, yeah, I guess I will just log in. So for those that didn't attend yesterday, I'm going to go ahead and come back here. For everybody that needs to log or access the project, you're going to go to atc.autodesk.com. When you go there, you will be prompted to put in your username and password, your email address and your password. For those of you that are using Revit and CAD, it's going to be the same username there. The first screen you'll see here, it'll say Autodesk Construction Cloud. You may be used to seeing the BIM 360 login, which was, I think it was docs.b360.autodesk.com. It was a different address. You don't have to go there anymore. You can come here, atc.autodesk.com, and you can access both BIM 360 projects as well as the new Unified Platform project. Now, I call it the Unified Platform. That's the correct name, but many people just simply call it ACC, the new ACC. As far as projects, you'll only see projects you've been invited to. I have 157 projects I've been invited to, but as a account administrator, I actually have access to, I think, close to 800 projects. I've just not invited myself to them, and no one's invited me to the other hundreds of files. To find a file, you can simply come over here to search, and you can type in part of the name, and I'm going to type in part of the number. The project that we're going to access, and then we're going to upload a Revit model to, is this one right here called 789 Building HQ3 Training Project. And so if I click on it, it will now open up that project for me. If I want to go to a different project, right up here at the top, I can click and I can scan any other projects I've been invited to. And note there's a lot here for me. So if I want to, I can come up here and I could, type in a different project number, and it will automatically filter based on, what I type up here, just like in BIM 360. But if you want to go back to the previous screen, you click on View All Projects, and it'll take you back to this main screen. So again, I'm going to access the 789 project. So some folders have been generated here. I went into project files and I created some folders. Some of these folders were in the template that we worked on yesterday, and then I added a few additional ones. Now, what I did is I did go to a BIM 360 project. I went to this one here, this Lake Nona, and I noticed, you guys don't use plans, but when I came over to project files, you had these two folders, shared and shared docs. And then this is your architecture Revit model. Under shared, then you had some link files. So what I did is I downloaded them and then I created the same folders, and here's my shared and shared docs. And then I had some of the other ones that were there because of the template file created these automatically. When I click on project files, here's that Lake Nona project. Now, it's the exact same file, but I did make a few changes to it. Number one, you notice that I changed the name. I added to the name Cloud Central, and I put in there R21. It's kind of best practice or industry best practice that, if you're going to put it up in the cloud, label it as a Cloud Central model, and then put the version of Revit. Because you can upload Revit models using this feature or this button, but when you do it that way, they're not Cloud Central models. So they don't work the same way, and I'll kind of show you that. But I'll show you how we can create a Cloud Central model, which is very similar to what you guys have been doing in the past. Obviously, you had to go through the steps to get this model up in the cloud. So to go through similar steps. But then I also noticed there were a couple things that were missing with this model when you had uploaded it. So that's what I'm going to go through here. So here's what we'll do. We will use this model for some other things, but I do want to create a brand new model, which is just going to have 4 walls, a door, and a window, and that's it. So I'm going to jump back over to Revit. Now, I'm going to use Revit 2021. And when you first upload a Revit model to the cloud, whatever version that Revit model is, that's the only version of Revit that you can use on the project. If you open up a different version of Revit, you can't even find this project. So I do have Revit 2022 on my computer, and I also have Revit 2023. And first thing I want you to notice is, we've got the same buttons, the 4 buttons up here: open new models, open new families. But then down here, we got recent files, and it says here BIM 360. In Revit 2022, it says Autodesk Docs with the little ball icon. And then in 2023, it says Autodesk Docs with an updated logo. They all take you to the same place. Okay, we're working in the Autodesk Construction Cloud. Really, that's what they should put here. They should just put here ACC, or Autodesk Construction Cloud. That's what they should all say, but that's where they're all taking us to. Now, if I happen to click on Autodesk Docs here or here, I won't even be able to find that project. They won't even let me look for it. Now, I've gone ahead and I mapped to it already. So I went to BIM 360, and then I came up here, and I simply searched for the word 789 or the number 789. I click on it. Here's my project. Here's my project files. Here's the folders I created, and then here's the model that I had uploaded yesterday. And I made some updates today. But what I want to do now is I want to create a brand new model. And I'm going to base this off the architectural template, Imperial Architecture, and I'll click OK. Now this part, you're welcome to do the picks and clicks on your end, but you really don't have to. When we get into the cloud, I mean, you guys are probably familiar with a lot of this, so you don't have to actually do this part of it. But if you do want to do it, first thing I would do is save this file and put your initials. So I'm going to save it as a project. You have to save it locally. You have to save it somewhere locally. It could be on your local server or your local PC or your local laptop. And so I'll just put this one here. I'll call it training, and then I'll put in my initials, MJP. Because if each of you call it training and I call it training, there's no way we can upload those models in the cloud. We have to have a different file name the first time we upload it. And usually you only have that one person who's going to create this. So I've created this file locally. Now what I do is, if I want to convert this into a central model, I come up here and I hit collaborate. And then I come over here and I hit collaborate again. And right here, this is what you've probably been doing, is doing it within your network. Now you're going to do it in the BIM 360 document management. Now, by the way, again, with the newer versions of Revit, it won't say BIM 360. It'll say in the cloud or in Autodesk Docs, but they take you to the same place. So I'll click OK. Now here's my file name up here. So I recommend that we rename this, add Cloud Central to this, or Cloud Work Shared. That's really the correct term, but we still say Cloud Central. And then we'll put in the Revit version, R21. So I recommend that you do add that. And then we'll come over and we'll select our account. So I'll come over to BDG. And when I come here, I should see, as long as I'm using Revit 2021, I'll see this project. If I was using Revit 2022, I wouldn't see it. Won't even be listed here. So I'll double click. I'll come over here to Project Files. And instead of putting it in the Project Files folder, which is what you guys do, and we can do it here too, but let's come down here to this folder called Revit Models, and then come to Architecture, and I'll place it here. So it'll create this file in that folder, and I'll hit Initiate. So now it's taking my local file. Right up at the top here, you can see the name of my project. It simply says Training-MJP. But when this finishes, it will then change it to the new central model in the cloud. Now, there are actually 3 different model types, or Revit types. What we just did is we created a cloud central model. And that means it's in the cloud and multiple people can access it at the same time. If I come over here, you'll notice that when I do a Save As, notice there's an option here that says Cloud Model. That's not the same as a Cloud Central model. A cloud model means only one person can work on it at a time. So you can't create work sets. You won't be able to do anything you normally do with a central model. When you do just a cloud model, you're taking a Revit file and you're pushing it up in the cloud. This is good for people who don't have BIM Collaborate Pro, and they're not going to do cloud work sharing. Maybe it's with a firm of just one person or 2 people, and they take turns going in the model. So you can have just a regular project. You can have a cloud model project, which is saved in the cloud, and then you can access it, or you can have a work shared project. Now, if I go back to the cloud and I come over to my Revit Models Architecture folder, there's my project. I just uploaded it. And notice it says version 2. The first time you take a Revit model and you make it a Cloud Central model, it will upload it. It appears to process it 2 times. So you'll see version 1, and then if you wait a minute or wait maybe 5 seconds, you'll see it to process again. It goes to version 2. And the reason for that is it's kind of doing like an audit, and it's checking just to make sure everything syncs to the cloud properly. When I log in and I typically see somebody upload, when I go to a Revit model, and if I see V1, that's an immediate indication that it's not a central model. Even if somebody called it this, because somebody could have downloaded this and then uploaded it to somewhere else on a different cloud service. The first time you upload a file, it will say V1. So usually that's an indication when people tell me, hey, I can't find my link. I can't find the link file. Like, well, it's not a Cloud Central. And sometimes we come over and we see there's a V1, and that's a clear indication. All right, so now what I'm going to do here, I'm just going to use Revit like I normally do. And all I'm going to do is just draw just a basic rectangular shape. So it's about, 16 feet by 24 feet. And I'll just put in a door. Architecture, wall, door. And I'll put in a window here. Now I'm going to switch to a 3D view as well, just to see it. And everything looks good. What do I typically do? I will sync to central. Now, when you sync to central, make sure you use synchronize and modify settings. Now, you could do synchronize now. You could do that. But the big difference is when you do synchronize, modify settings, if you happen to be working in it and you're touching stuff, then you can relinquish control. which is perfectly fine because the recommendation is sync to central every 10 to 15 minutes. Just in case something happens, your machine loses internet connectivity, your battery dies, whatever. So sync often. You'll notice up here, it does say BIM 360. If this was a Revit 22 project, it would say Autodesk Docs. So don't let that throw you off. And then we can place a comment, you know, I say added walls and doors. A lot of people don't do this, but if you get in the habit of doing this, you can at least track what changed from the last time you synced it. So I'm just syncing up to the cloud. Now what I want to do here is I just want to create a few views. So in my 3D view, I'm going to right click and I'm going to rename this one, and I'll just call this one 3D building. And I will duplicate that, duplicate view, and I'm going to right click on this and I'll call this one 3D closet. We haven't drawn a closet yet, but we're going to do that. The other thing I want to do is I want to come down here to sheets, and I'm just going to create 2 sheets, 30 by 42. If you have a Revit template file where this is already created, then we'll just use those. But I'll just grab a floor plan view and I'll pop that over here. And then in A102, I'll grab a south elevation view and I'll pop that over here. Okay, I don't care about, you know, getting it all organized. That's all I need to do. Now, I made those changes. I got some 3D views. And if I come up and I sync to central, I added some views. And I'm syncing to the cloud. All right. So I'm going to jump back over, and this is something I noticed on your project. When I go back to your project and I opened up this model, first thing I notice and the first thing I look for is I usually come up to I come over here to the left-hand side where it says sheets and views, and I can see that there's a 3D view, there's the default one, and then there's no 2D sheets. Now, that's okay if nobody's ever going to go to the cloud and look at the model, you know, but if they do, now they have to kind of, you know, zoom around, look for stuff, maybe turn things on and off. It's helpful if you include a few 3D views and some sheets when you pushed it to the cloud. Well, I'm going to go back to the project we were just working on. Remember, I just synced to central, and I created 2 sheets and I created 2 3D views here. If I click on this and I open it up and I take a look at it, first thing we'll notice is nothing's in here. And if I come over to here, I notice I only got a 3D view and I don't have any sheets. The reason this is blank is because when I first created this project, the first thing I did was create a new project. I saved it, and then I converted it to a Cloud Central model. And when I did that, there was no model in here. I didn't draw any walls yet. So the question is, you know, where are the walls that I created? Why don't I see that? And the reason I don't see that is I have to do one more step. I have to do publish. So publish means to take your model in its current state and create a version in the cloud that everybody can see the same thing I see here in Revit. It's kind of a snapshot. I kind of describe it like this. If you have Revit, you will always see the latest and greatest. And think of it like there's a curtain and the Revit model is behind the curtains. And everybody who has Revit can see behind the curtains. But for people who don't have Revit, who just said, hey, I just want a viewer, they can't see behind the curtains. So we need to publish, the term is publish, where we're going to create a new version here. So what I end up doing is I am going to come up to the Collaborate tab. And I did notice you guys use Publish Settings, which is cool. So if I go to Publish Settings, you guys had some published settings where you had like all of your construction documents or your sheets selected. and that's great. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new one here, and I'll just call this one ACC. You can call it whatever you want. But what I want to include up in the cloud is I want to include my 3D views, my 3D building, and my 3D closet. And if I come down here, I'm going to include my sheets. Now this is really small, so just those 4. And then I'll hit save and close. And I usually go back into it just to double check I didn't miss anything. We want to make sure this is checked, and then I can see the views that are associated with this current set. So I think you guys probably use this for printing, which is great, but we could also use this to control what views are visible in the cloud. And the really important thing is, you know that when you open up your Revit model, you have a lot of views. You've got a bunch of floor plans, ceiling plans, 3D views, elevation sections, details, drafting views, schedules, legends. You got a ton of views and sheets. Well, if I'm just going to be a viewer, I don't need to see all that detail. All I want to see is just what you give me permission to see. I want to see the 3D building, and I want to see the closet, and I want to see a couple sheets, and that's it. So this controls what you see up in the cloud. So I'll hit save and close, and I'm going to hit sync to central, and I could say added publish settings. Cool, I synced to central. I've now synced my model, 4 times. And if I come back up here, if I open this up, you still won't see anything, because now the last step here is to do publish. Now, you don't typically do this on your server, your local file server, but for the cloud, that is the extra step we have to go through. Now, in Revit 2021, there is a button up here that says Manage Cloud Models. So you could use this button. With Revit 2022 and 2023, they removed this button. You have to do it in a different location. So I'll first show it to you here in 21. When you click on this, what this is going to do now is it's going to go out to the cloud, and it's going to look for any projects you currently have been invited to. And here's my project. And I'm going to click on it. And I don't know why it shows those big icons, but it's always done that. But now what you can see is, with this project, you can see all the files that I had uploaded or converted to Cloud Central models. Notice that some of them have when I hover my mouse, you'll see a little green circle. That means that model, the latest version, has already been synced or published. But notice this one right here, this training MJP, it looks like a piece of paper with an arrow. I'm going to click on it, and I'm going to hit publish. Now, it looks like it's, that kind of looks like a symbol to me, like it's uploading to the cloud. It really, the correct term will say it's just updating the cloud model, or it's updating the published model. So this shouldn't take too long. I'm on pretty slow internet here at my sister's house, but this won't take too long. Your other models I did earlier today, and they took a few minutes. But while that's publishing, when it finishes, you'll see a big green bar along the top to kind of let you know that it's publishing. Or I can just minimize this, and then I can continue to do whatever work I need to do. But you see right there, now it's finished. Now I'm going to jump back over to the cloud again, and you'll notice it's updating, and it's updating to version 3. So if you remember earlier, I said sync to central every 10 or 15 minutes. Well, if you sync to central every 10 minutes, that's 6 saves. And, you don't want a new version every time you sync. So that's why the sync and the publish are separate, because the publish is kind of a snapshot in time. And so right now, my Revit model and this published model are exactly the same. But if I go into Revit and I start doing some work, which I'll do now, I'll come over here and I'll go to my floor plan view, and I'll take this window, I'll put it over here. I'll take this, I'll delete it. I'll add a new door over here. And then I'll go ahead and I'll add a wall here for a closet or something. And I'll pop in a door right there. And I think what I'll do too is I think I'm just going to lower all my walls. So 10 feet. Oh, you know what? I'm not going to do that. I don't want that to change. My bad. I should have done that first. All right, so I'm going to hit sync to central. Click OK. And now what's in the cloud is not going to match this model right here until I do another publish. But waiting for that to finish syncing. This is all in the cloud right now. I can actually exit out of Revit and I don't have to do, it'll continue to process. In fact, I made a few changes here. So now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to close up this Revit model. And I'm going to switch back over to here. If I come over to that folder where my training file is, this is it right here. And notice what it says. It says update available. Because I did a sync to central and then I got out of it, it recognizes that the central model behind the curtains is not the latest published model. And remember how I showed you to publish it, you have to go into the file and then you go to that button that says Revit, Manage Revit Models. Well, I told you that button doesn't exist in 2022 or 2023 anymore. So that we do it in those versions, and we can do it here with this version, is simply clicking on the file and you see the button right there that says Publish.